go through the presentation. So, my is on world cultures and unique ways of business negotiation. So, this is preparing students for the global work discussion webinar. And so, my name's Ellen Street, and I'm a research assistant at Consulting. We do professional development for teachers. Here's my contact information. While my company works mainly on pre-K through 12th grade, I am very interested in the workplace and English and how culture affects the way that people understand each other. So that's why I've decided to give a webinar on this topic. First, we're going to start with the USA. I know not everyone here is from the USA, but I'm going to use it as a baseline since I'm American and Noble was founded in America. So there is the way that Americans negotiate. The basic idea is that we wish to do the business as soon as possible. Our goal is to start at the beginning, lay all the cards on the table, tell you exactly what we're looking to do, and then we're going to explain it even further. Sometimes this is very hard-hitting for other countries, except for countries like Germany, who are even more hard-hitting. But that's why we bring in a little joke afterwards, and we just kind of, after explaining exactly what we want, then we'll just joke around with you about it a little bit. Afterwards, we're going to go through and we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty and really discuss exactly what we want. At the end, we'll summarize everything, and then hopefully the business will be done. Our goal is to get through the meeting and get out of the meeting with a clear explanation of exactly what we want and what the next steps are to achieving that. So this is the countries developed by Geert Hofstede. He has developed a series of power, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty avoidance, pragmatism, and indulgence on all of the different countries. So just to give you a brief definition of each one, power distance, it starts out with the difference between two different people. So how equal are people from different cultures? Do they try to make sure that everyone gets a fair share and a fair shot, or is it you have some people that are very, very rich and very powerful and others that aren't powerful at all? The second bar, individualism versus collectivism, is do you care more about the one person and your immediate family, or do you care more about the entire society together, or a collectivist society? Basically, is there a difference between I or we in the society? So, and then the last one, or the middle one, I'm sorry, is masculinity versus femininity. Masculinity is if you're rewarded for being successful, if your goal is achievement, basically getting through the rat race. Femininity is basically do you care more about cooperation, modesty, caring for weak people, and which one is rewarded in the society? The fourth is uncertainty avoidance, which is how comfortable does a society feel with being uncertain and ambiguous about what's happening in the future? Long-term orientation versus short-term orientation is how do you care about the future? Obviously, you have to focus on what happened in the past and how you can use that towards the future, but how much are you going to use your past to prepare for the future? Are you going to improve based on what you know now, or are you going to kind of make the same mistakes? And then the last one is indulgence versus restraint. So what is life all about? Do you care more about enjoying life, having fun, or is it more about suppressing that gratification that you have and staying with the strict cultural norms? So now we're going to move over to a popular country for business negotiation, which is China. Many people have a very difficult time with understanding how China works because it's so different from the West. So here's an example of how Chinese negotiations happen. Notice uh, the shape is much flatter than the USA. It's much softer, and many of the negotiations are behind the scenes. Um, so first you start out very soft, and then you move just a little bit louder, and then you use your position of power to push what you want to be true through the conversation. Then afterwards, you have to be very careful not to make others lose space. You have to be very delicate about what you say, and not necessarily a no isn't necessarily going to be said in the conversation. And notice what's really interesting is China also wants clarity at the end of their negotiation, just like the USA. We're going to go back to Geert Hofstede's explanation of culture. So you can see the difference between China, which is kind of the grayish one on the left, and the United States, the one on the right. Um, Power distance. So China, there's a greater distance between those that are very powerful and those that aren't very powerful. So when you go to negotiate with Chinese people, you have to keep in mind that the powerful ones want to be seen as powerful. They need to know that they're the ones in charge. Um, Also, the Chinese, they're very collectivist, so they all work together. And so you aren't necessarily going to see and negotiate the fruit of your negotiation because they have to go back and discuss for the greater good of the group. Let's go ahead and move on to just some blurbs about how China and the U.S. differ. So basically, the Chinese, they're more interested in getting through the negotiation process than they are the actual goal of achieving what they want from the negotiation. It's more about the dance than it is the actual outcome. So a little bit of the insight into their personality based on the negotiation is their work endurance is more important than their talent. So you may be very intelligent, you might be a lawyer, a dentist, but what they care about is how many hours are you going to put in? Um, how hard of a worker are you? They're also, comparatively to the Japanese, they're much more direct, which is good for us because we're very direct. um, they're also they also see the big picture rather than simply the details. They want to think about where exactly do they want to take their business in the future? Are you going to be helpful for that? They're not just going to think about, okay, this is a fast buck, perfect. I'm going to take this with me and I'm going to sign the contract. They're also, because they're collectivists, they think about being in a group. They're very suspicious of people who aren't in their circle. So when you go to negotiate with the Chinese, you're not in their circle, so they're going to automatically be suspicious of you. So it's very important that you gain their trust. Also, it's very important that you know that the Chinese, they pad their negotiations much more than Americans. So they are willing to go lower in price than Americans might consider would be acceptable based on the first number they give. But it's going to take a very long time for you to talk them down from that original number. All right, now we're going to move on to Japan. So unfortunately, there wasn't a chart for Japan, but I can give you the explanations of the different cultural separations here. So notice that the power distance has changed greatly from China to Japan. Yes, they care a lot about the difference between the higher ups and the lower people in their company, but not quite as much as China. So you're going to still have to mind that the people that are that are in charge are going to be more in charge than you would expect in the US. They're also very collectivist. The US cares more about the one person, whereas in Japan, they're going to all work together and make a decision together. Also, it's important to them to achieve the to achieve, I guess, to achieve their final goal. The US, comparatively to Japan, we care more about helping other people and understanding their point of view, and Japan has a very, very high score on just this is what I want and this is what I need to get. Okay, so the point of negotiation in Japan is that they have an opportunity to share information with one another. You can kind of feel that community feel. Just a little bit of insight into their personality. They don't want to exchange their own information with one person to person with people such as Americans because they need to consult the group. So just like I said in China, you're not going to get an immediate, yes, that sounds good to me, because they have to go back and discuss it because the decision doesn't come from one person, it comes from the group. Um, an interesting thing about the Japanese is they will never tell you that they're not interested in doing business with you. They simply will avoid your phone calls and you will never be able to hear from them again if they're not interested in doing business with you. The people that you are negotiating with, they don't have very much power. They're actually just the people that negotiate, and then they'll go back to the person who is in charge or the group that's in charge and explain the situation. So you can't talk them down too much because they have to go back. Let's see. They also consider the long-term decisions of where is this headed, and they really want to trust you before they make a decision. And once the decision has been made, they expect immediate action. They might lollygag around, be very relaxed about it until they made a decision. And once that decision's made, then you must move quickly. It's very important for you to show great respect to their employees. So always talk to the senior employee first. Go up to him and be very respectful. Okay, now we're going to move on to India. So a comparison of India with the US. Some interesting things going on here. We still have the same distance and individualism difficulties had with the other two countries. This isn't surprising because the U.S. attempts to equality, and we're much more individualistic than them. We're pretty similar when it comes to do we care more about other people? Do we care more about achieving our goal? They care a little bit more about the common human being than the U.S., and they reward people that are very open and helpful to others. This is the chart for Indian negotiation. Notice that they are very interested in being courteous through the whole situation. I've heard many a story of an American explaining how they want to negotiate, and they'll lay all the cards right on the table, and they'll explain everything that they want to say. Whereas, if you notice in the first block, the Indians, they expect a long, verbose preamble, and in the U.S., Indians will come to the U.S. and they'll completely ignore exactly what you're saying at the beginning. So keep in mind when you're working with Indians, you have to expect this long just preamble and explanation. Then it's important that you ask for the other side's point of view. You need to show that you're courteous of the other side. The third part is very difficult for Americans. We need to pretend like we're going to be flexible with them. So give give them a little give and take, and then try to make a final deal with them. It probably won't be made at that point, but you'll be able to make a couple of edits and change it a little bit, and then you'll be able to reach the agreement at the end. Okay, so some of the basics of India. The greeting is namaste, and you have to give a slight bow of the head and put your hands together in the praying position. They'll very much appreciate this because this is part of their culture, and it'll show that you know something about them rather than just going over there to try to make money. You can also see the caste system in their last names, like any name that ends in J, E, and G, like Banerjee, then you'll know that they're from high caste. Or if they end in car. Um, Also, an insight on their perception, they care much more about trust than they do a good deal. If they trust you, but you don't necessarily have the best economic plan for them, they will still make the deal with you. Punctuality is very important, but you also need to be flexible with them. Also, family is more important than business, so don't be surprised if when you are ready for their meeting, they give you a heads up that they will not be attending because they're having some sort of family issue that's more important. To arrange a meeting, you need to arrange the meeting well in advance, either by writing or by phone. When you get there, you need to greet the most senior figure first and start the meeting with just a little bit of conversation. Examples, the Bombay Stock Exchange or cricket. And it's very shocking to Americans, and I imagine many other countries as well, when you go to India, the poverty. But this is not a good time to comment on the poverty. Um, Trust will also, it'll come before a deal. So trust is paramount over everything else. Indians also, they won't say no. They'll simply say, we'll see, or I'll try, which for you, that may mean a yes or a probably, but that actually means no. So it's important that you understand this difference. Okay, and the final country we're gonna work with is Brazil. So here you have the chart for Brazil versus the US. Um, the same problems as before, or differences rather. Power distance is very large in Brazil. Individualism is very low, so they're very collectivist and they work as a group. They care more about the general human population rather than making sure that they make it to the top. So they are rather feminine in their approach, and they think a lot about how the past is their future, and they see life as more of a this is how it's always been, and life isn't necessarily about having fun. Life is about having fun, but not to the extent that the so the important thing that you remember when doing business with Brazil is that they're they have strong relationships, and that's the key to winning this deal. It's not about can you give them the deal, it's about how they feel about you. So make sure that you spend a lot of time spending time with them, schmoozing with them. An insight into their personality, when you start out there, it's very important to work with a despachante, so the local contact, so they can introduce you to the right people there. If you go it alone, you most certainly will fail. So be sure to start off with that. Um, an interesting one for me was verbal communication is greater than communication. So for them, they care a lot more about um, an agreement, a handshake, rather than writing everything down on a contract. They also they use strong eye contact. They move their arms a lot and they stay very close to talking. I know this is very awkward for other cultures, but try not to be put off by this. Try not to be too reserved. This is completely normal, and they're trying to explain themselves that way. When you go to a meeting, please dress conservatively because everyone there will be dressed mainly in black and suits, and don't wear lots of extra jewelry because it's possible that it will be stolen on your way to the meeting. The way that a meeting is organized, are not able to drop in without an appointment. Make sure that you schedule it at least 2 weeks before and then call to confirm just as a courtesy. The meetings tend to start late. I'd say maybe 20 minutes late. So don't be surprised if you get there on time and then they're always there late. They run on a different time. Brazil, if you will. They'll have a lot of small talk at the beginning and ending of a meeting. And that's so that they can create these relationships so that they can decide if they want to negotiate with you or not. And this last one, it goes back to the verbal communication and written communication issue. So there's no need for agendas. Don't bother typing one up because if you bring agendas with you, you'll be the only one that's actually it. So don't waste your time doing that. So I hope it's been informative just to kind of see a quick span around the world to see the differences and the difficulties that cultures have when working with one another. My contact information is right there on the left, and please feel free to contact me with any questions or the chat's right here, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? I actually have a few questions, if you don't mind. Well, you were saying that Indians like maybe instead of saying no. So how do you know they mean no instead of maybe? How can you distinguish the difference between the two?
Are we talking?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. That's a very good question. So my uncle, he works in the banking business, and he has told me countless stories about difficulty working with Indians. So it's not really normal for people to say maybe when it comes to a contract. Like, can you get me this person's information by tomorrow? And they'll tell you if they say will, it's no, but they'll yes, they'll negotiate with you and they'll talk with you, but you're gonna get either a
Okay, so like that whole like will see kind of doesn't exist, I guess. Like the will see is basically the no. It,
right. We'll see is the no,
okay.
because it's rude of them to say directly know you. So they want to make sure that they don't embarrass you by saying no. I'm sorry, superior. I have to say no to you because it's impossible what you're asking. They'll simply say maybe. Or I'm sorry, they'll simply say see or I'll try.
Okay. And then I was interested to know what made you look at these specific countries: Brazil, India, China, Japan, and the States.
Sure. Well, they're all emerging markets. They're ones that Americans are very interested in tackling. I went mostly with the Eastern ones because we seem to have the most difficulty understanding why businesses don't pan out there. And then Brazil is one that's up and coming and actually booming already. So it's something that I've heard Americans say, well, we've been working with the Brazilians and we were about to hang up, and after 20 minutes of waiting, and there they are on the call. So it's just kind of getting awareness out about the different cultures, that they're not acting rude, or they're not trying to upset you, just acting what they know to be true, and they don't know how your rules work, just like you don't.
Okay, and I see Carolina has a few questions as well.
Let's see, about power distance. Is this within companies and colleagues, or also in their social lives? So as you begin to have a more personal relationship with them, will this distance remain? Um, well, as you spend more time with people, if you develop a personal relationship, then they'll see you on their level. It's simply you'll see a great distance between, like, the Indian caste system. Um, if you come in and you show yourself to be someone who's low on the totem pole, well, then you're going to be treated as someone who's low on the totem pole. But if you friends and show yourself as someone who is intelligent and at a certain level, then the power distance culture remains, but not necessarily with the person you're working with once they figure out what level you're at.
And I see Kiddo asked about the the Prezi and the references. We are going to be posting the webinar on YouTube. Maybe Ellen can add a section about the references.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
And Carolina, I haven't done thorough research of Latin America, but I'd be.
I think you did cite the the
Right. Okay.
references.
Yeah, I have all of the references for all of this, and if you have any more questions after that, I can always look further into it if you'd like.
Ellen, are you are these the countries you're going to study for your master's degree as
Yeah.
well, or was
So
this?
I'm starting an accent reduction business at the end of this year. It should be in full swing. So these are the countries that I've been looking into getting into the markets for. So obviously Spain, Latin America, those will be helpful because of my Spanish background. But Eastern groups, they seem to need more help with the English language. So their cultures are becoming increasingly more interesting to my profits.
I don't know if anyone else has any other questions before we close the session today. Okay, well, I guess we'll leave it at that. Feel free once again to check out the Noble website. Thank you so much, Ellen, for presenting today. I think we all learned a lot. I know I learned a lot about different countries that I didn't know
Great.
about. And yeah, like I said, we're going to be posting this on YouTube, so